Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I have your attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead and take your notes out so that we have them at the ready. We're going to be continuing with the Russo-Japanese War, okay? And we will hope to wrap up the Russo-Japanese War by the end of this period so that the folks at home can get that and anybody who happens to be absent. Yes?
Were we supposed to watch that movie?
I'm trying to think. If you haven't watched it yet, watch it. Okay? Here's the deal. I'll tell you this. And I told the last class period as well. Okay? It's good. And so this actually will help you as we go through because actually I may be able to call on anyone, but you may have some of the right answers because some of the critical events that took place in the Russo-Japanese War are presented and covered in that particular film. If you haven't watched it yet, watch it. It's, what, about 20, 30 minutes? It's not too, yeah, it's not that long. And it's a good thing. Sometimes I have time to show it in class, other times not. But we move forward on this. Other things for you to do. I know in a lot of classes you have a lot of things to do on your off day, which you're on because I know, I already talked to you. You guys had English homework, so I know you have that. For my class, here's what I want you to do. Listen very carefully, okay? In addition to watching the video, I want you to start thinking about what your history topic is going to be, potentially, for your research that you're doing this semester. I'll give you a little bit of indication on what you can focus on. Focus, Merrick. Okay? All right, so this is going into parts here. Every time I have a conversation with any of you guys, it's going up to YouTube, and it's like permanent, like in the, you know, the Spider-Verse, in the universe, whatever. Okay? So here we go. Next time we're going to train. In class, I'm going to train you on how to do the History IA. I'm going to give you packets, tips, notes, things that I've written on the things. So we're getting started on this. This is going to be very, very important and very good for you. But I'll tell you a couple things just to start to get your wheels rolling right now. The topic that you choose for your history research paper is one that you want to do. Okay? It doesn't necessarily have to overlap directly with what we're doing in class. In class, we do a lot of war, a lot of politics, things like that. And that, you know, but you'll get tested on those things essay-wise. But history is actually a very, very broad topic area. It covers the arts and music. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that you could have your history research paper focused on. When you get to the extended essay, one of the reasons why so many people write their extended essay, it'll start that I think next semester in Mrs. Rao's class, one of the reasons a lot of people write their extended essay in history is because you can write about just about anything in a historical context. Like, for example, I remember a student that wrote about race relations in Star Trek, the television show in the 1960s. Captain Kirk, white guy, kissed Lieutenant Uhura, black woman, on television in the late 60s. And that was a big, like, you know, thing, right? And so she did a whole research paper on the kind of things that were going on. It was really interesting. It was really well done. And it was obviously not something that would necessarily be covered in my course. A lot of the topics for history-based extended essay or the history IA that you guys are going to be doing in my class aren't covered necessarily. Got that? Kaj, come with us, okay? So be thinking of different things. Here's a couple of tips. He's like, where are you? Here's a couple of tips. It helps when you're doing your picking your topic if it's, say, within the last 100 or 200 years, because the sources tend to get a bit older and a little bit harder to get to earlier. It helps also if there are a lot of the primary sources in English. It's not impossible to do one on something to do with another country and so forth, but some of the primary sources are a little bit harder to come by there. Okay? What you will be doing, and I will assign you, I'll give you like within a couple of weeks, you're going to be doing an annotated bibliography. In other words, you're going to kind of pick the topic, right, and then research to find out if there's some good research sources out there. When you do that, you're going to write a couple sentences about each of those sources. You'll turn that into me, and we'll set up a meeting. Because you and I can't come up with a question, a really good question about your topic for you to research on, unless we know at the get-go that there's going to be some good sources there.
So, when you say we could do anything, could we, like, say, do the history of peanut butter?
Food is a fascinating component of history. Oh my gosh. There's some actually really good documentary videos on like food things. I'm not kidding. Okay, so you and I will have wonderful conversations about what topic you want to do your research on. Okay, all you're going to need to do is start thinking about it, because this is why I'm mentioning it now. Start thinking about it, and don't wait until I give you the assignment next time. Start looking and seeing if there's some good sources out there. And it's a little trickier because BSU is not readily available, but there is still some very good online sources for your research. Okay? All right. And I gave you this last time. I think you were the first group that I gave this to last time. There it is, chapter 27, 20 points. You guys will be doing it when you come in next week on Tuesday. Okay, so 20 questions. I want to say I think there's some true false. There's definitely some true false, and I think there's some matching as well. Okay, so come in prepared for that. Any questions? All right, you guys doing okay? Yeah. The quiz is listed up here on Tuesday. Okay. All right. And I've also got that information in Google Classroom. In fact, I just uploaded Google Classroom day 2. So we got day 1, day 2. Obviously, the people at home are watching those, and I'm giving alternative assignments to them as far as their quizzes, because they can't take quizzes at home. You guys can take quizzes in here. They can't take quizzes at home. Have your notes out. Have your notes out. Do you get your notes out? Yeah. They're going to be doing like a summary of the material in the chapter, okay, of the things that are handed out.
Is that not kind of unfair?
We're trying the best we can to provide an education for people who are here and for people who are at home, and obviously there's some differences. I don't get to come around to the people at home who may have a whole collection of really cool Hot Wheels and say, really, is that appropriate to have in front of you while we're doing notes? You don't even have anything here yet for your notes, so move aside. Traffic conditions have moved your cars over there. They can park. This is why we have an extra table for you. I'm wondering really if we're going to be able to get everything done. And have your written devices right here. Okay, good. It's awesome. Everyone else is ready to go. Okay? Yeah, some people don't need that much space because it's like, I get my typing on a phone. Yeah, I can. Okay? All right? We'll find out. Okay. All right. Am I right? All right, any questions? Are you guys ready to get to it? All right, we got until 10:10. And, yeah. Okay, ready? All right. The Russo-Japanese War. Oh, I got to ask questions. The Russo-Japanese War was fought between two countries. Merrick, which two countries fought the Russo-Japanese War?
Russia and Japan.
Very good. Who won?
Japan.
Very good. Okay. I'll give you the three. Go 3 for 3. What was one of the main reasons? We haven't covered all the details yet, although you do have some tactical information because you already watched the video. What is one of the main reasons that Japan won?
Industry.
What about it?
They were smarter at making boats.
They were very good. Make sure you have that in there. Now, I need to make sure this is clear. This kind of surprised people because they thought Japan was stuck in the past and they weren't advanced and they could have been beaten. Russia, write this down, Russia and Japan were actually fairly equal when it came to industry, fairly equal. Russia could, one of the reasons why Russia lost it was because of proximity. We'll get to that in a moment. But Japan, there was the surprise. You got that in your notes? Japan had really focused on industrializing over the previous 50 years. So by 1904, they had a modern navy. They had a modern equipped army. Okay? And so did Russia. But here is one of the reasons why it worked out so badly for Russia. Location. Location, location, location. I mean, it's so important for real estate. It's so important for war. That's why in one of my favorite movies, The Princess Bride, Vincini says, prior to taking the iocane poison and dies, is anyone else into that movie? Never get into a land war in Asia. You know that one. All right? So here's the deal. Well, if you're an Asian country already, what the deal? Of course you're going to be in a land war. I mean, what? That's just crazy.
But
Is Japan an Asian country?
no. Yes.
Yes.
It's an island.
Yes, it is. Is Russia an Asian country?
Yeah.
Yes. But put this down. Russia is an Asian country and a European country. I mean, look at the map. There it is. That's why Russia is part of Eurasia, which is the name of a large continent that runs from the Pacific all the way to the Atlantic.
That is insane.
Put this down, though. What is the main location of Russian population, Russian resources, and where Russia's biggest military threats come from? Europe. Very good. So put that down. When the war gets started, right here, which is located primarily, the war is going to be fought in what parts of the world, Emily? We covered this last time.
I know.
Starts with a K. Korea, very good. And just to the north of that part,
China.
it's part of China today. In your notes, you might put it specifically as Manchuria. Okay, so you're like northeast China. So that's where a lot of the war is going to be fought. But when you look at it and you're like, well, who can bring their navy and their army most easily to the area where the fighting is taking place? Japan. Japan can, because they're right across the water. Now, Russia is right there, too. There you go. You see in the notes? Vladivostok. It's a Russian seaport on the Pacific. Yeah, got that in your notes? Port Arthur. It's a Russian seaport that they took away from the Chinese because the Chinese are weak. And the Chinese have been, like, losing all kinds of stuff throughout the 1800s. And yet, the primary military assets that the Russians have are in the European part. Because understandably, that's where most of the Russian population is. Cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg. And that's where traditionally most of the threats have come from. Right? Napoleon came from the West. Germany is going to be coming from the West during World War II, which is going to, excuse me, World War I and World War II, which is going to be coming up soon. Yes? That was the United States. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We're going to have some fun with history. I thought the United States was always good and noble and did. I mean, in fact, America is great. And when you look at America over the vast course of history and so forth, I mean, not always perfect, but we do have some things. And actually in that, we showed a lot of restraint. In 1850, we could have shown up and, like, guns blazing, said, here's our message, we will trade. We gave them a year. It was very threatening, though. Yeah, I know, it's so kind, yeah.
We are so nice.
Okay, so here we go. Yeah, we're going to have some fun in this class, I can see, with America's role in history. So, here's the deal. There was something, though, that was built. Kylie, tell me. You can look at your notes and so forth. Tell me. It's very important to have these in front of you, because if you do, that way you will be able to answer correctly based on what I have provided for you previously.
It was a boat.
Hold on. I'm asking Kylie. What was the name of that transportation infrastructural program that was built connecting the western populated parts of Russia to the Far East? And it ran all the way to Vladivostok. It wasn't a big interstate highway. What was the name? You've got the right paper. And then choo-choo trains went on it. Yeah, what's the name of the railroad? Thank you, the Trans-Siberian Railroad, which tells you that most of the railroad went trans through Siberia, okay? The railroad that connected the United States of America, the Transcontinental Railroad, which connected the United States of America, that's a big deal. That's North America. Okay, Merrick, please. For Russia, the big important railroad is the Trans-Siberian Railroad. In your notes, write it down. That had just fairly recently been completed in Russia. So when the war gets started, there will be soldiers, weapons, and other supplies coming from the west, where most of the Russians' assets are, over to where the battle is. But notice this. Some of you guys will appreciate this. Yes, it was a functioning Death Star.
Sweet.
Okay.
Hey.
But it was not. There you go. It was not as good as it could have been. In fact, there were parts of the railroad that were only like one track. So they couldn't move as much as they needed to keep up with the fighting that was going on. You got that? Okay? And as far as naval assets, can you put big ships and so forth on a railroad? No. You got to move those by water. Okay? Which we'll get to. All right? So the Trans-Siberian Railroad did provide a connection, but it's a little bit too far and a little bit too stretched down, and it's not as going to be as helpful as maybe the Russians had hoped it would be when they decided to build it. Okay? Now, let's get to the details of how this war got started. Did we get started on the war last time? Did we tell you who started it? Maisie, who started the war? If you don't have that, maybe we didn't get to it. It's okay. As it turns out, Japan started the war. Write this down. Japan and Russia fought this war, okay? And they're fighting the war because they want to take over territory. Jacob, where do they want to take the territory from? China. And what territory previously had been sort of under the protection of China?
Manchuria.
Japan was not under the protection of China. It was Korea, okay? Yes, you got it. So it was Korea that was paying its lunch money tribute on a regular basis for hundreds and hundreds of years. But because China becomes so weak, poor Korea was exposed. And Japan had taken it over earlier, and Japan wanted to move and take over more territory, like Manchuria, but so did the Russians. I mean, everybody was taking territory from the Chinese. And sometimes they'd cooperate. The British would go, okay, France, you can have this, and the Netherlands or whatever, Portugal, you can have that. But sometimes, in this situation, Russia and Japan were in conflict. Okay, now they were talking about it. Write this down. They were in negotiations. They were in negotiations like, well, maybe we don't have to fight over this. Maybe we can come to an agreement like, you take this and we'll take that, right? I mean, that's how Poland got carved up. 3 countries, Austria, Prussia, and Russia, looked at Poland and said, we can carve it up, and they did. The 3 countries made Poland disappear in history, and it will not come back until the end of World War I. Anyway, but in this situation, no. The negotiations were over. Well, when are the negotiations over? When are the negotiations over?
Never.
And war begins?
19...
1904. In fact, I can give you the specific day. February 8th, 1904. Well, who knew that the negotiations were over? Well, Japan knew that the negotiations were over because they stopped negotiating. Yeah. I mean, both know that potentially there could be war. And this is always a fascinating thing. When you go through history and you look at like 2 countries or more that are like at odds with each other, they may be in negotiations. Are they focused on peace? Are they focused on war? Or both? What do you say, Jersey? Now, is it aggressive? Let's say I'm negotiating with you. Is it okay if you're negotiating with me and you're getting your army, your military ready for war?
That's so cheap.
That's not okay because like, we're trying to talk peace and he's getting his military ready for war. Is that smart of him to actually get his... Yeah, Jacob's nodding his head up and down. Jersey, why is it smart for you to get ready for war when we're talking about peace? In case what? In case it doesn't work out, exactly. Then you will be ready for war. Okay? In fact, you'll strengthen your position, arguably, in your peace negotiations if you are seen as strong. So the other side will look and go, yeah, maybe we should have some peace with this guy because I don't think war is going to work out very well. Sometimes what happens is both sides walk away from the peace negotiations and then they both get ready for war. That's not what happened here. Japan attacked first. Write it down. This is one of those things. It happens in history sometimes. There's some advantages. You look like a jerk to the rest of the world because you're attacking first. But there is an advantage in a surprised attack. February 8th, 1904, Japan conducted a surprise attack against Russia at Port Arthur. Okay? The Japanese had their military come over from, say, the Korean area, and then they sent their navy there. Got that? Oh, and then they officially declared war 3 hours later.
What?
I mean, war had already been taking place. I mean, are there lessons to be learned on the behavior of countries? I mean, let's say it's 1941, and Japan and the United States are kind of like talking to each other about like what's going on in the Pacific and Asia and so forth. and there's a potential war that's going to take place. Should the United States be ready in case Japan tries to do another surprise attack? Yes. Was the United States ready in case Japan tried to do a surprise attack? Not in the location where the surprise attack occurred. Where did the surprise attack occur? Anybody know? No idea? Nobody know? Anybody know when it was? I mean, before this Friday, 19 years ago, this Friday, big important day, very stuck on people's mind.
9/11.
9/11. You guys weren't even born yet. I mean, you're like among the first group of people that wasn't even born for 9/11, were you? No. Oh yeah, we'll be at school. Yeah. I mean, I remember going to school at Capitol when 9/11. I remember, hearing about what took place, in New York and outside of the community actually that I grew up in, Arlington, Virginia, because Arlington's right next to the Pentagon, which was hit by a plane. In fact, it was weird because when you got all the details and so forth, one of the guys that graduated, I want to say like a year or two before me in my high school, he was an airline pilot. He was in the plane, got killed when the hijackers took the plane, turned it around, and flew it right into the Pentagon. And so people attending, families in that community and people attending that high school and so forth, they were very, very impacted. It was a big deal. That was a surprise attack. And the United States was like, "Rrr." I mean, yeah, we'll talk about that. December 7th, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. The United States Naval Forces in Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. We'll be talking about that fleet. And this is interesting. But we were like, they might strike somewhere, and da-da-da-da-da. It was a very, very interesting thing. It's like, were we ready? Well, we got a lot of ships hit. Was it a conspiracy that we just wanted the Japanese to attack and so forth? It was like, oh my gosh. Interesting questions, though, historically. But here's the deal. Was it the first time Japan had attacked first and then declared war afterwards?
No.
No. That's how they got the Russo-Japanese War started. Okay? And it was not the last time. Okay? There's some other analogies you can get. When you pay attention to history, you're a little bit more ready for what is happening in the world today. Okay? That's why history is interesting and actually quite relevant. All right, so here we go. Japan is attacking. The Tsar. Who was the leader? Kim. Who was the leader of Russia at the time? At that time. Not right now. At that time. And check your notes, because the name is written in the notes. Afterwards. Who was the last Tsar? Nicholas II. Yeah, very good. It's in the thing, right? You see that? So write that down. And make sure you have this. And some of you guys are like, I remember we sort of did this we did do this last year. But now we're looking at Russian history in the context of like all of 20th century history. So here we go. 1904, Tsar Nicholas II is in charge. And he is an absolute monarch. Okay? We're not talking about like the British constitutional monarchy. I think there was like Edward something who was the king. But the real power was in the hands of the elected parliament in Britain. But in Russia, it was the Tsar who was in charge. And so he's in charge of the war. And he was astounded. He was like, man, I hate this job. I think he hated the job when he started it. He was like, I just want to be with my wife and my 4 daughters and my son who has special needs because he has hemophilia, da-da-da-da-da. He was never that excited about the job. So here he's got a big war now. And what's he going to do? Well, he's going to get his military involved, right? As it turns out, the Russian military, they had army and navy. And they did have some navy and some army already there. Was it enough? As the war went on in the early stages, was it enough? No. Did they have enough supplies and reinforcements readily coming in through the transportation infrastructure, the Trans-Siberian Railroad? Not enough. The Japanese, were they able to get their military and resources across this short water? And actually, they already had a bunch of resources in Korea. The Japanese were in a prime position to wage that war. Key battles. Battle of Mukden. You can write it down. And in your notes, I kind of messed it up a little bit. It's like the Battle of Mukden and Tsushima Straits. It looks like it's the same battle. It's actually 2 separate battles. The Battle of Mukden was one of the big land battles. And the Japanese defeated the Russians in that battle. There were hundreds of thousands of people who were impacted, soldiers and so forth. It was a big war. It took place in ferocious display fairly quickly. And significantly, the Russian fleet in the Pacific around Port Arthur was defeated early in the war. Got that? Make sure you write that down. I'm not going to give it all the battles and so forth. The one naval battle I'm going to talk about is the Battle of Tsushima Straits, which is the subject of that video, and very interesting. Watch that, okay? The Battle of Tsushima Straits. We'll get to that here in a moment. But it's like, here you are, Nicholas II, and you're like, this war is not going very well. Make sure you write this down. For Nicholas II, money, people, hardship on his own population in order to fight a war. That's what happens when you fight a war. You got to I got to win this war, so beg, borrow, steal, whatever you need in order to win it. It doesn't work out so well when the war doesn't turn out well, because if you can tell the people, you sacrificed and we won. We're all victorious in this together. It really sucks when you're like, you sacrificed and we lost. Side note, Nicholas II, he's going to have a little mini revolution on his hands in 1905 when it's clear that he has lost. Is it going to overthrow him in 1905? No. He will be overthrown at the end of World War I. Look into the future. When we get to World War I, Russia versus Germany, it's not going to work out so well for Russia, and it's not going to work out very well for Nicholas II. And they're going to not only get rid of Nicholas II, they're going to get rid of everybody, and who's going to come in there? The pigs. Excuse me, Animal Farm, the communists. Uh-oh, that's right. When we get to World War I, yes, you remember that from last year. Mm-hmm. Yep, when we get to World War I. It's very interesting because, 1905 is when the Russo-Japanese War is over. And if you're Nicholas II, you're like, man, I need to do something to really fix things up because, man, if we get into another war with a really big power, it's going to work out bad. World War I started 9 years after the Russo-Japanese War was over. Nicholas II is out of a job by 1917. Okay? As in, he quits as the czar. And probably he should try to leave the country and end up in Britain, where his cousins and, because they were all royal families and intermarried and so forth. But the British were like, I don't know, which was too bad for him because he ended up, most of you guys know what happened to the czar and his family when the communists took control. They lined him up and shot him. Yeah, they killed him. Anyway, back to the Russo-Japanese War. Nicholas is like, I'm not finished with this war. My army is doing the best it can to fight over there. My navy over there is in bad shape because they've been mostly obliterated. But I have more naval resources. Where was a big chunk of the Russian navy located at the beginning of the war?
Arthur.
That was the Pacific Fleet, and those guys are in trouble. If the main threats to Russia over time are from the west, the Baltic Fleet, write that down, the Russian Navy in the Baltic Sea, with its primary port being St. Petersburg, because St. Petersburg is right on the Baltic Sea. The Tsar gives the command, all right, Baltic Fleet, you're going on a trip. The Baltic Fleet, the Russian Navy over here in the Baltic, is going to make its way to where the fighting is. Got that? Now that's a long way. Are they going to go by train? No, you don't take big ships and put them on a railway car. It doesn't happen that way. You go by water. So let's take a look. Look at the map here. All right, I need some help. Nikki, give me a route for the, let's say you're the Baltic Fleet commander, and you're going to end up over here where the fighting is taking place near Korea. Got that? Give me a route, like Google Maps. What is the quickest direction on how to get to this place? Okay, leave the Baltic. I'll help you a little way. Now you're in the Atlantic. Now which direction? Down.
Don't go that way.
Don't go to the north because at that time there was still a lot of Arctic ice and so forth. So yeah, don't go the north route. Okay. Go across the Atlantic? No? Maybe? Across the Atlantic, you were like, across the Atlantic? Maybe you can go through the Panama Canal. It's not quite built yet. Besides that, America, write it down. America's neutral. All the other countries are neutral in that war. Write that down. It's very important. All the other countries are staying neutral in the war. They're like, this is between Russia and Japan. We don't want to take sides. So no, that's not an alternative. And yeah, you want around the tip of South America and then into the Pacific. It's a long, long route. As it turns out, by that time, there was a canal, the Suez Canal. The Russian fleet could have gone through the Mediterranean Sea, through the Suez Canal, and then into the Indian Ocean. The British were in charge of the Suez Canal. Is the British going to let the Russian fleet go through? No, because they're, exactly, very good. So here's the Russian fleet. Check this. The Russian Baltic fleet goes all the way through the Atlantic, down past the southern tip of South Africa, and then over here into the South China Sea, finally up to the battle. Now, if you're in the Navy, if you guys ever go into the Navy and so forth, one of the things you really look forward to is like hitting a port, going to like a base. The United States has got bases and other allies and so forth they can check into. How many bases along the African coast or South Asian coast are going to let the Russians refuel and like get fresh supplies and so forth? None, because it's neutral. So this Russian fleet, you've got to feel bad for these guys. This Russian fleet goes all the way from the Baltic on this massive journey to Tsushima Straits, where the Japanese are like, we're ready for you. We got a plan. There will be a battle. The Russians went all the way, and there will be a battle. May 27, 28, 1905, the Battle of Tsushima Straits. May 27 and 28. This is going to be like the last big battle, certainly naval battle in the war, because it's decisive. Right? You saw that, right? It's pretty good. The video? Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's good. I liked it. I saw that, and I'm like, this is cool, because it gives you like a nice thing. And two of the ships, one from the Russia, one from the Japanese, are still around. And they kind of can help sort of tell the story. So here's the deal. You got the Japanese fleet, you got the Russian fleet, and they're actually pretty well matched as far as like the big boats. The ones with the big guns that can hit you from a distance, right? Because they had developed that over time, naval warfare, big guns. Boom, boom. Let's say you got the Japanese fleet over here, and we got the Russian fleet over here. They just come from the Baltic all that way. Oh my gosh. Did either of them have a clear superiority as far as firepower and range? Well, they were pretty evenly matched. So you look at that.